Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Monaco.
And I'm Bobby Salvesen. We are the Hazmat Guys, bringing you knowledge and insight to make your job a little bit easier and safer.
Let's take a minute to hear about today's sponsors.
Hey guys, Bobby from the Hazmat Guys here, and this episode is brought to you by FLIR Systems. If you're not sure about your white powder is fentanyl, or maybe you suspect that you have an explosive hazard, or you need to confirm that the leaking barrel is toxic, the FLIR Griffin G510 GCMS is your go-to for next-level on-scene chemical identification. Mounted in your vehicle or carried to the point of sample collection, it is always ready. Using the built-in touchscreen, start the method wizard to help you select the best method for the mission. If you have no time, no lab, it's no problem. You can quickly identify unknown chemicals with accuracy. To learn more, go to FLIR.com/G510, or that's FLIR, FLIR.com/G510.
Let's get to the show.
Hey guys, Bobby from the Hazmat Guys here, and we are back with episode 208?
208. A
208.
little bit more correcting on our part.
Yeah, and we got our good friend Nick, and we are going to continue down the road going through what we did incorrectly in episodes 78 and 79. So without any further ado, let's just get right back into it.
One of the guys I work with is a volunteer firefighter. He's a battalion chief, and so he needed some training at his fire department. So we went down and did a placarding class for them, and when we got done, they were blown away. They're like, we had no idea what the dangerous placard meant. Nobody really ever told us. One of the paramedics in class said all we had was 2 hours of hazmat during our entire paramedic school, so we had no clue. So what the dangerous placard allows them to do is instead, it boils down to money, really, if you think about it, and maybe ease, because instead of having to placard for every hazard class that I have on the side of my tractor trailer, instead I can use this one placard, each side and each end. But there's some specific rules they have to comply with to be able to do it. So it has to all be non-bulk packages. So if I have a bulk package in there, so over 119 gallons if we're talking liquids, I would have to placard for that hazard class. So you kind of push that to the side and say, all right, it can't be anything bulk. So I've got non-bulk packages. They have to all be Table 2 commodities. That's, again, out of those placarding tables in 172.504. And if I have loaded more than 2,205 pounds at one facility, I have to placard for that category. So let me make that kind of make a little bit more sense for you. So let's say we're going to talk all non-bulk. Everything's non-bulk. So I make my first stop. I'm a truck driver, and I pull up and I load that was my air horn. I
liked it. It was good air horn.
So I pull up to my first facility and I load 1,500 pounds of Class 8. So that's corrosive. We know that that's a Table 2 material. And I load 1,500 pounds of Class 3. So we know that's a Table 2 material, all non-bulk. So that's 3,000 pounds aggregate. That means added together of Table 2. So we know I have to placard. So my requirements would be to placard for both of those. But instead, I can just slap the dangerous placard on there and be on down the road. So then I go to my next stop and I load up, let's say I get some non-flammable gas. That's that cool green one. I get 2,500 pounds of that. Well, now everything is still Table 2. Everything is still non-bulk. But because I'm over the 2,205, now I have to placard that non-flammable gas placard, that green one. I got to slap that one on there. But if I had been smart and only loaded 2,200 pounds, I could still just use the dangerous placard for all three of those. So you could potentially have 3, 4, 5 different hazard classes in there of thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of this stuff. And as long as not more than 2,205 pounds has been loaded at one facility, I can cover it all with one dangerous placard.
Okay, I have a question, because this is one of those things I've heard in classes, and I'm going to myth bust this right now, is that the truck only needs to be placarded for the most hazardous commodity that's on it.
Not necessarily. That's not true. So to kind of work through placarding, the first part of placarding says if you haul any hazmat, any bulk package, everything has to be placarded. And then it starts giving you some exceptions. And so you're going to have to placard for what you have on board. So if you've got, like my previous example, I had flammable, I had corrosive, and I had non-flammable gas. I would have to placard for all of those. What we do for the table 2 is if the table 2 material is over 1,001 pounds, I'm going to have to placard for it. So I would have to placard for all 3 of those hazard classes. I think what you're referring to is some other placarding exceptions, which is probably where the myth comes from. It talks about there's some exceptions in 172.504 paragraph F that talks about explosives. So let's say I have a 1.1 explosive. That's like dynamite, the real nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got 1.4, let's say consumer grade fireworks. That's like your fireworks stand stuff you get for the 4th of July. I would only have to placard for the lowest division, and the lowest division is the higher hazard. So like the 1.1 is worse than the 1.4. I'd have to placard just for the 1.1. I think that's where the myth comes from. But you have to placard for all hazard classes unless there's some other exception. And that's what's crazy about placarding is you have this rule that says everybody's got to do it. And then they start listing exceptions. And then really within those exceptions, they give you another exception.
Right. Crap.
Sounds like bureaucracy.
It boils down to money. I mean, if you have a good lobbyist in the trucking or the hazmat community, you write your legislators and say, hey, this is really a burden for us. And so we think we should have an exception. And they're like, okay, that's cool.
That's cool.
Right. I got to follow up. You had said a couple times, right? We were talking about the dangerous placard, and you were like, if they're smart, they would do this.
Yes.
Why would they care? Like, quite often we hear like, oh, they could not placard, like they could be trying to like skirt the rules. Like, I'm a truck driver. What do I care if I'm throwing a dangerous sign up there or if I'm go ahead and I just slap up a placard for everything that's on there? Like, who gives a crap?
Okay, so I think to my point about if they're smart on my previous example for dangerous would be it saves me having to placard in that previous example. I wouldn't have to placard for the non-flammable gas if I was less than the 2205. So
Right.
I could keep one placard for all of it. But here's really, when you get deeper into it, here's what it really saves. If I can find an exception where I don't require placarding at all, that means I don't need a hazmat endorsement. And there's certain people who can't get a hazmat endorsement because of their criminal record. So if I'm a trucking company, I might say, hey, I got Billy Bob over here who's got a rap sheet a mile long, and that guy can't get a hazmat endorsement, so I need to find a load for him that doesn't require placards because he can't haul it if it does require placard. So it becomes a business decision and maybe a financial thing. It can also, if I have a little small vehicle, like I've stopped a pickup truck one time. I'm sitting at a stoplight one day, and I see this Ford F-150 coming at me, and I see a poison gas placard on the front. And I'm like, oh, no, you're not. You're not flying a poison gas placard just because you think it's cute. I'm like, all right, he's probably false advertising. He probably thinks it looks cool. Well, then he goes by me, and I'm like, oh, he's got one on the right side, too. Then as he keeps going, I see he's got one on the tailgate. I'm like, well, maybe he really is a commercial vehicle. So I go stop him. Sure enough, he is hauling this little tiny cylinder, like for you heroes in the room, the firefighters, like smaller than an SCBA bottle, like half the size of that. And in his tail, you open up his tailgate, and he's got like a 2x4 in there. Between his tailgate and the 2x4 is this little tiny cylinder. And what he does is bug fumigant stuff. He goes into people's attics and does like bug bombs. But because that was a poison gas, requires placards any amount, he had to have a CDL, Class C, with a hazmat endorsement to drive his F-150.
Holy crap.
That's a really long answer to answer your question of why would I not want to have placards? Because it might find an exception just like that. If I could ship that as something differently and not require placard, it's look what else I have saved. Because that opens up a whole nother can of worms behind the scenes for the trucking company. They have to have other safety measures in place. They have to have higher amount of insurance. It's a whole can of worms when you start talking placardable quantity of hazmat.
All right, then I have one follow-up to that one now, because how many times do you find just ignorance is the cause versus nefarious?
I would say a lot of times it's usually ignorance, because as the three of us sit here and talk, and I feel like there's been some jaw-dropping moments already, and you guys are the hazmat guys. So you guys are hopefully learning something from this today too. Imagine if you didn't do this full time and you're a truck driver who are like, dude, I'm just driving down the road trying to feed the family, and I don't know, I threw what I thought was the right placards up there. And so a lot of times it's just ignorance. And by and large, hazmat drivers are, well, they're held to a higher standard, so they're usually carry themselves a little bit differently as far as they're more professional, they've had more experience, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
generally speaking. So usually their errors are just because they screwed up, they missed it. There was no ill intent or anything where they're trying to skirt the regulations. They just were doing what they thought was correct, or maybe some of those old wives' tales, like you mentioned a few minutes ago.
And maybe just like a little education goes a long way in fixing this problem, and it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we've had some pretty large companies, hazmat carriers that have been around forever, and you can usually tell how long a company's been around by their USDOT number, because like right now they're up in the probably 3.6 million range. You'll get a carrier that's got a DOT number that's only like 3 or 4 digits long. They've been around a long time. That's all they do is haul hazmat. And even them, sometimes they screw up and they end up getting an out of service violation for the wrong placard or the wrong marking or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And is that like a huge deal? Or is it just like, oh, no problem, and they switch the placard and they're on their way?
That right there. Yeah. A lot of times it'll be something like the markings. Let's say you have a compartmented cargo tank. We had some changes a few years ago that came out through, I think it was 2014, and it completely changed the way that we as enforcement taught it, the way we enforced it, the way that the cargo tank industry operated as far as marking for the lowest flash point. And the nutshell versions, we used to say, if you have ever hauled gasoline in that cargo tank, just put the ID number for gasoline for 1203 on there and you're good to go. Well, now it's changed, and because of an interpretation that came out from the Pipeline Hazardous Material Safety Administration, it says you have to have gasoline on board or you can't market for gasoline. It goes back to the false advertising thing. So it kind of makes sense, but it changed the way everybody's done everything for like 30 years. It's a really big deal. I'm involved at the national level on conferences through the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance and sit in on the hazmat committee. And I mean, you get a room full of experts in there, and you better make sure your coffee cup is full because you're going to be there a while. Because everybody's got an opinion, and they are really good at what they do. I try to keep myself pretty humble there. I'm just like, yeah, I'm here to watch. I don't want to make myself look like an idiot. You know what they say? Nobody knows how dumb you are till you open your mouth and prove it. So
Yeah.
I try to stay little at those conferences. There's a lot of people know a lot more than I do.
Well, let's throw the last one on. This is from episode 79. So all that stuff was from 78.
Okay.
And we said that orange rectangle panels are markings, not labels. Explain again. Just tease that out a little bit more. Placards, markings, labels. Exactly what does that mean for me in bulk and non-bulk and that
Okay.
crap?
So the placard, again, is that large square on point, about 10 inches square. It's got the symbol at the top. It's got the number at the bottom. It's the big colorful thing. That's what you're going to see first when you respond to an incident, probably, because that's what you can see through binoculars from a distance. That's what everybody sees going up and down the road, whether it's a cargo tank or a van trailer. Your markings are going to be on the package, or it could be on the transport vehicle. For the transport vehicle, it's usually going to be that orange panel, or it's going to be that number, that 1203 that's within that placard. That's actually the marking, like on a tanker. It's also going to be on
Okay.
non-bulk packages. So you open up the back of a trailer, and you've got a bunch of little boxes in there. And on that hazmat box, you're going to see the proper shipping name. It's going to say methyl ethyl bad stuff. It's going to have UN ID number, whatever. It'll have the package type, like down when I talked earlier about the actual package specification. It would tell you that it's a 4G. That just tells us it's a cardboard box. And then it'll have some other numbers and letters, tells us what packing group it's designed for. It talks about where it was manufactured, the date, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the label. That's the little, we call it a baby placard. It's a little 4-inch square. It's usually adhesive, and you just pull it off of a roll and you slap it on the package. And that's the little thing that goes on those little non-bulk packages. So generally speaking, all non-bulk packages have to be labeled with their primary and their subsidiary hazards. So if I've got a class 3 that's also a corrosive, both of those labels will get slapped on that package. But on my transport vehicle, I only have to placard for subsidiary hazards in 3 occasions, and that's not one of them. So I could just have a class 3 on my transport vehicle. So placard's the big thing, label's the little baby placard, and then the marking is usually the words and the text and that sort of thing. Does that answer your question there and clear that up?
Yes, absolutely does. Hey guys, you've heard us talk about First Line Technologies' Dahlgren Decon solution and their FiberTech wipes and mitts. Well, they've had a lot of their customers ask them to provide in-depth training on using Dahlgren Decon, FiberTech wipes, as well as their various kits, and now they've created a First Line Utilization Academy to deliver the range of classes designed to improve their students' knowledge of hybrid decontamination. They have a special comprehensive Train the Trainer course designed to prepare trainers and hazmat team leaders to return to their organizations and conduct training. The participants in this course will receive a template lesson plan, a presentation they can use to train their teams, and a quick reference book they can use in the field. Now, class size for the Train the Trainer class is limited to 6 to 8 participants, and classes fill up fast, so reserve your desired training date today. They will also conduct customized on-site classes to entire teams to give everybody both classroom instruction and hands-on experience in using Dahlgren Decon and FiberTech wipes for hybrid decontamination. Call the guys at First Line Technology for more information or to register for a class at 703-955-7510 or email them at training@firstlinetech.com. All right, let's pick up where we left off.
I have another question. I got a couple of questions that I'm like, well, as long as we're talking to an expert, might as well, try to get these squared away. When you're looking at all of these placards, right, and you're assuming everybody's following the rules, that only is required on the roads.
No, but I only do roadside enforcement. But I think, are you referring to as opposed to on a ship or on a train?
No. I mean, yeah, like let's say I'm a firefighter and I'm responding to an incident that is in a factory or in a facility or something along those lines, and I pull up and I see a placard on a box truck, let's just say. Just because it's on there, it doesn't mean it has to be what's in there when it's not on the road.
I'm
correct?
tracking with you now. I'm tracking with you. Yeah,
Okay.
If you go back to the very beginning of part 171 of 49 CFR, it talks about what is subject to these hazmat regulations, transportation functions, what's not subject. And so, yeah, just because it's sitting in the parking lot of a shipper and you show up to a structure fire and you're like, oh, this is a hazmat carrier and there is a box truck sitting out there with corrosive placards, that doesn't necessarily mean there's even any corrosives in there, or maybe there is hazmat and that's not there. I mean, it could be anything. So we're not regulating that stuff, especially me as a state trooper. That's not what we do. We don't regulate stuff sitting in parking lots. We're talking about stuff going up and down the roadway. So that's a great precautionary advice, I guess you could say, for your listeners, that don't trust, even on the side of the road, don't trust what you see until you've verified that's really what it is.
Right. We've had just over the road truckers that pull off on the highway to take a nap, and some punk kids come up and they go, let me just change this over to radioactive.
Yes,
and they run off. And so the guy wakes up and he's got 300 firemen and 60 state troopers around him. And he's like, what the hell?
Well, or here's another example. Just like I mentioned before, the poison gas little F-150. I stopped a guy a couple of years ago. I see this Chevy pickup or something. It's got a dangerous placard in the back window. Well, we just talked about dangerous placards. You guys can probably recite that now. So this kid, I could see, wasn't wearing a seatbelt too. So I had a valid reason to stop him. So I stopped him. I walked up there. I said, hey, man, I stopped you because you're not wearing a seatbelt. And I'm assuming also that you're hauling hazmat because you have a dangerous placard. So I'm guessing you have 2 or more table 2 commodities, not more than 2,205 pounds loaded at one facility. And this 16-year-old kid just looks at me with this. He's like, what?
What?
I was like, oh, well, the dangerous placard. That's what that means. He's like, no, I just thought it was cool, man. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and take that off and just hang it in the front of your garage? Because, like, I'm a nerd. I got all the placards hanging on the front of my garage as I pull in. So, like, every time I pull in, I'm like, yeah, hazmat or whatever. So, anyway, my wife loves that stuff. But it does warm my heart when my kid is like, Dad, what does that dangerous placard mean? Like, oh, son, I'm so glad you asked the question.
Sit
Yeah, you
down.
really are, Mom.
Yeah.
But how impressed would you
Yeah.
be if
So, but yeah. So,
how impressed would you be if that 16-year-old kid was like, yeah, well, I followed the tables on CFR 172 point blah 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 blah
exactly.
blah.
I actually have some funny stories about I have two boys, and my oldest one, he's 13 now. When he was a little kid, one day he's in the bathroom for a while. He was kind of new to being toilet trained and everything. So he's kind of got the door cracked, and he's in there for a while. So I'm like, hey, buddy, you doing okay? I kind of pushed the door open a little bit, and he's sitting there with my hazmat book on his lap and goes, Dad, what is all this stuff? And he's looking through the hazmat table in 172-101. I'm just like, that is awesome. And now you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute,
Bring a
you're
tear to
thinking,
your
why was there
eye.
a hazmat book in the bathroom? First of all, hey, you got to have some good reading room material, and you got to be prepared as an instructor. You put yourself out there for people to call you with questions, and sometimes they're like, "Hey, man, you got a minute?" Yeah, I think I do. What's your question? So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, good stuff. But anyway, so back to your question.
Oh.
Just because the Chevy pickup has a dangerous placard in the back window doesn't really mean that it has hazmat on board. So,
I love it. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming on and clearing up a lot of this. We invite this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like Mike said in the last episode that we don't get this very
Absolutely.
often, but we
absolutely.
appreciate it when
If
it
I
does
have
come in.
time,
So
I do have a couple. I talked about in that document that I sent you just some kind of points, some of the exceptions I think that your listeners might be interested in. I can try to make it quick if you got time for that. Okay.
yeah,
No,
Yeah,
go
sure.
for
I
it.
know I was actually in a kind of a tabletop exercise one time, and one of the guys said, well, if there's any hazmat, there's going to be placards. I'm like, not so much, not so fast. There's a lot of exceptions to this big subchapter, this big book, as we've just been talking about this morning. And some of those that you would run across would be batteries. You could have an entire tractor trailer full of batteries, and there's no placards whatsoever. One of the guys that I work with responded to an overturned battery truck one day and walked up there, asked the truck driver, what's he hauling? He goes, oh, nothing hazardous. And there's batteries all over the side of the road. Sure enough, he had 40,000 pounds of
Oh,
car
God.
batteries, and he claimed it was non-hazardous just because he didn't have placards on board. So don't forget things like that. Non-bulk combustible. So if I have a combustible liquid and I package it in non-bulk containers, so less than 119 gallons, I could have tons and tons and tons. I could have a whole tractor trailer full of 50-gallon combustible packages, no placards required. And so a driver may not even know he's got hazmat on board. So you respond to an incident. Limited quantity.
Because I have a question that just brought up. We get this every once in a while, and I'm always a little confused about
Okay.
what the right answer is. Okay? We
Right.
are in New York City. Gas prices are pretty high, and there happens to be a state right next to us that gas prices were
Yeah.
at some point a lot less. And people would actually travel to this state, fill up a whole bunch
Yeah.
of jugs, literally like 15,
Right.
20 jugs in a van, and then drive back. One of them would leak. We would show up. Everybody would,
Right.
would flip out. Is there anything, I mean, like that
Right.
is a non-bulk package. They could have as much as they want. Like, are they doing anything wrong? Are we allowed to confiscate? Like, where does that land?
I have a picture of the exact same thing you're talking about from a New Jersey trooper. He had a 15-passenger van that he stopped that was full of 5-gallon cans of gasoline, doing that very same thing because gas was cheaper across the state line. So if it's gasoline, that's a flammable, and that's different than a combustible. If it's a combustible, they're kicked out of the regulations. But if they're just a private citizen anyway, we don't regulate them. You have to be in commerce to fall into these federal regulations. So unless there's something through some state agency in your state that can regulate anything like that or hold them accountable for something like that, there's probably nothing you can do.
that's great.
So does that technically mean the guy with the F-150 pickup truck didn't need to be placarded because he wasn't?
Yeah, he
in,
was a
oh no,
business.
he was in commerce.
Yeah, he was a
'cause selling.
business.
Okay.
That's what his business was doing bug bombing.
And-
So yeah, he had to be placarded. But another example of that is when I unhook my barbecue grill and run it up to the grocery store to swap it out, I don't have to have any hazmat shipping papers or anything because I'm just a private citizen. I'm not in commerce. I'm not doing it for a business. Unless like your state fire marshal's office or something like
Right.
that has any
That makes-
way to hold that person accountable for having a leaking hazmat in their minivan, there's probably nothing that anybody can do about it.
So what about a fire department that collects, that would come around and maybe collect some cylinders that would be broken or leaking or something along those lines? They're not engaged in commerce, so they don't fall within those
That's right. You are
criteria then.
specifically accepted, no different than a like an explosive ordinance. Like we have bomb dogs in my agency, and a lot of agencies do. So they actually have explosives that they transport in their patrol cars because they use them to train with. They wouldn't have to have any of that. I carry road flares in my patrol car. That's technically a hazmat. It's a flammable solid. It's a 4.1, and I don't have to carry any hazmat shipping papers or anything because I'm the government. So the government gets accepted out of all that stuff, whether it's city, county, state, tribal, the U.S. Post Office, any of that kind of stuff. They don't have to mess around with that because they're the government.
Okay, so that would then hold true to like overpacking something and then putting it on a recovery vehicle.
For the fire
If
department?
it's if it's for the fire department, they're fine. But
Yes.
if I'm going to package something, like let's say I'm going to package diesel in a 55-gallon drum and then hand it off to a tow truck operator,
Okay.
they're good doing that because it's a combustible under a certain amount.
That brings up another great point. So now that it's transferred hands to a tow truck operator, since it's a combustible, it's going to be kicked out anyway. But it could also, when the tow truck operator is there on what we call an emergency move. In other words, they're there for the cleanup. They get some exceptions for the first move, like from the scene to a safe location. They get a lot of exceptions. After that, then some other regulations kick back in. But in that case, since it's non-bolt combustible, it's going to be accepted out of the subchapter. So he could totally do that. He could just throw that on the bed of his tow truck, strap it down just like you would any other cargo, and be on down the road. Doesn't have to worry about shipping papers, placarding, anything like that because it's non-bolt
And
combustible.
could you do the same for gasoline under that exception?
Not under that exception because it would be a flammable, not a combustible. But they would probably get some other exceptions based on the fact that it's a first move. They could get that exception there. Or another example would be a tow truck driver shows up to tow a tractor trailer that's hauling double trailers. Well, normally you'd need the double, triple endorsement. Well, since it's first move to get it to a safe location, you wouldn't need it. It's kind of along those same lines. But in reality, if I'm sitting on a scene and my tow truck driver is there to clean up the scene, I'm not going to be too concerned at that point with a 55-gallon drum of gasoline. I'm going to think, dude, just get it off the road so we can get out of here so we don't get run over.
Well, yes, but we have had people argue with us that they can't because it's blah 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 blah. So I've actually tried to find this and I never was able to.
For exceptions for the diesel or the gasoline?
For the tow truck operator first move.
Okay. Yeah, that's gonna fall under 390. This goes back to some other subparts of 49 CFR. 390.23, 49 CFR 390.23 is going to accept out tow truck operators when they've been called by the police. So that's going to accept them out of those safety regulations. For hazmat regulations, I'm going to have to do a little bit digging. I don't want to try to do it while we're trying to talk here. Let me do a little bit of digging and see what else I can find, and I'll email it to you if you want to check into any of that or look up any of that stuff later on.
All right, very cool. And as soon as we get that information, we will put them in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I wonder what the answer to that was, we'll make sure that the website is updated with the proper information.
And then just a couple of real quick exceptions if I got time.
Yeah, and
So limited quantities, you probably see those if you've ordered anything. I just got something in the mail the other day from like one of the shaving companies, and it had a limited quantity marking. That's the little tiny, it looks like a little label, but it's got black on the points and it's got white through the middle. And what that does is if they package it in small amounts, hence the name, limited quantity, it's a small amount. We're usually dealing with milliliters, ounces, little small amounts. Then it kicks them out of the rest of the regulations if they slap that limited quantity marking on the package. So you could have a whole truck full of that stuff. It's technically hazmat. It doesn't require placards or anything else. That's kind of a weird one too. And then
I actually saw that once with a whole tractor trailer full of perfume.
There you go. That would be, yes, that would absolutely be one of them that would be shipped as a limited quantity because, again, it's a good business decision. It allows them some exceptions, and it keeps the trucking company from needing placards and endorsements and things like that. Here's another one that you could run across, especially in the 4th of July season. There are some 1.4S materials. I think there's 3 of them. I think most of them are actually cartridges, small arms, some things like that. They don't require a label, and so that also means they don't require a placard. So you could have an entire tractor trailer full of certain ammunition and not have any placards on it. And the driver could say, "No, I don't have any hazmat. I don't know what you're talking about," when really he does. So, because he may not know, it could be a sealed trailer.
Right. He's just going off the paperwork.
And then the last one is what we call materials of the trade. So I mentioned before in the very beginning, maybe a lawn care company. So maybe I have a lawn care business and I have a bunch of 5-gallon gas cans. And because I use that gasoline as part of my business to fuel my lawnmowers and my trimmers and stuff like that, I'm not just hauling it around to be hauling it around. That's what we call materials of the trade. And so they get a certain amount, like for gasoline, they get up to 8 gallons per package, which I don't really ever see any 8-gallon gas cans, probably 5 gallons. And they get up to 440 pounds on their truck or trailer before it becomes regulated otherwise. So it kicks them out of placarding and that kind of stuff. As long as they mark the package, they secure it, it's not leaking and things like that. So they could have a whole bunch of stuff on their truck and you wouldn't even know because it's materials of the trade or somehow accepted out. Kind of a lot of crazy exceptions.
That's crazy. Wow. I love it. I got to say, Nick, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
And we talked about this before. If anybody has any questions or anything further you want from Nick or anything, contact us at the Hazmat Guys. Send an email to info@thehazmatguys, and we will pass it along to Nick, and he will get back to you at his leisure.
I try to be leisure. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to come on. When I first was going to email you, I was like, man, I hope you guys don't think I'm trying to be a jerk and correct things, but I just want your listeners to know that, hey, hazmat's dangerous. Hazmat is everywhere. We all got to be safe together to work around it because we want to go home at the end of the day. You guys want to go back to the firehouse, make some more chili, take a nap, whatever it is that firemen do. So we want everybody to be safe.
No, it's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at The Hazmat Guys, and take a moment to call our comment hotline at 843-628-1484.
And we are always looking forward to your feedback about information or interesting incidents that you were a part of, so send us a note at feedback@thehazmatguys.com.
Remember, guys, don't just get on the job, get into the job.